Hello, hello, hello. It is Thursday. It is time for Let's Talk Power Live. Welcome to the end of July. We've been doing a lot of conversation over the last few weeks, but before we get started, I want to say thank you to all of our subscribers. Thank you for trusting us. Thank you for joining us on this power journey. We know that power in education is real, and we also know that instructional power is even more real. But here's something else we know. We know that a large percentage of you, about 80%, are still dating. We'd love to have you be part of our family officially. So before we go any further, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and share this with somebody who understands that power in education is a real thing, and they want to learn more and have some real dialogue about it. Dr. Tangi Reed Marshall here, your host of Let's Talk Power Live, do a lot of work around the country on building authentic student agency. We base all of our work on my book, Understanding Your Instructional Power, and what it means to create the kinds of conditions students are going to face in their learning environments. And that's why I'm excited about today's show. Before we get started, though, I want to share with you this question and this response. People ask me all the time, why do you talk about power in education? I talk about power in education because power in education is a real thing. And then they ask me, well, since you talk about it so much, what actually is it? I want to give you what I call the capital P power in education definition. Here it is. Education is the instrument of democratic designs, and it is no less the instrument of power. The control of information, the shaping of understanding, and the influence of judgment are critical elements common to democratic design, power theory, and educational philosophy. That is the capital P of power in education, where systems are created in ways that really impact whether or not students have the opportunity to experience the excellent education they deserve or they do not. And here is what I mean when I talk about instructional power. I want to share that with you as well. Instructional power can be understood as an educator's use of their state, district, and building ascribed job-related authority to afford or constrain a student's access to learning. What do we mean by that? We mean that if you are an educator, and if you follow me in any way, shape, or form, you know for me, an educator is at any level, not just a classroom level. What I mean by this definition, this very specific definition, is if your role in this profession of education has the ability to impact, determine whether a child has access to the educational materials, structures, and systems and resources that they deserve in any way, shape, or form that opens up that opportunity to them or holds that opportunity back, even if you are doing it inadvertently and don't realize it. That is your use of instructional power. And that's really important to consider. So and that's why I talk about it, because it is a real thing. And it is something that we don't see. It's like wind. It is like wind. We don't see wind. We see what wind does. We see the impact of wind on objects. You don't see power. What you see is the impact of someone's use of their power at every level to open doors or close doors. And in education, we like to pretend that we're somehow different than society, and we don't have the same challenges by way of power dynamics that are inherent in society, and we do. And the way adults use their power really does impact the way young people experience the learning environment. And that's why we're talking about this. And we're having a particular conversation about this at the middle school level. I spent decades teaching at the middle school level, coaching leaders and teachers at the middle school level. And I know firsthand what a challenge middle school can be. And a lot of times when people say, "Oh, what grade did you teach?" And I tell them, first thing you get are eye rolls and sighs as though they pity me. And I'm going to tell you, I love middle school. I love the messiness of it. I love watching a young person move into that bridge to adulthood. It is fascinating. It is challenging, but it is worth really digging into that. So I am excited about that. And I want to invite you to make sure you get your copy of What Agency Requires of Adults. Here is the link. If you go on my LinkedIn page, you will see it. Would love to engage in a conversation. It's really important. Agency requires explicit instruction, not because kids don't exercise it. They do automatically. But agency in the school setting requires explicit interactions, explicit conversations, and more importantly, I want to say this, agency requires every adult in the building have this same understanding of what it looks like, of what it feels like, and what it should sound like in the building. And if, as we get started going to school, and that's going to be our conversation today, if that isn't happening in your building, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You're going to have places where students are experiencing it and places where students are not. And in the spaces that are different, that disparate location between where they do and where they don't, that's going to cause some real power protecting behavior from adult to adult and adult to kid. So I'm going to invite you, go ahead, make sure you click. Get the link right there. We can put the link in our notes for you in the chat for you to have it. Go ahead to our LinkedIn page and you will see it there. The other thing I want to share with you is our summer power chats. We know summer is that time when adults have less time in the building, but they're still learning. And what we did, we talked to one education author and we talked about one book and one big idea. And we've had a fantastic time of really looking at these power chats. We've had so many wonderful authors and we can't wait to share them with you. But today, we're going to have a different conversation. It's the end of July. We know this idea of back to school. The back to school season is officially underway. It has started. And here is something I want us to really dig and dial into. Back to school, the idea of it makes sense, right? We're going to go back to school. But what I want to say is maybe the idea of back to school isn't enough. It's not enough for kids to go back to school. Kids need more than just going back into the environment they left. And the place where they were when they left, they're not the same kid. They're different kids now. They're older. They have done more over the summer. Some of them have worked. Some have traveled. Some have had to babysit. Some have taken courses. They are changed. But a lot of times they go back into an environment where the rules are the same. The systems are the same. Where the first week of school is all about the handbook, all about the rules, all about the same structure. And I want us to challenge ourselves to consider the idea of going to school. But we're going to have this conversation tonight about what is it that they're going to go to as opposed to simply going back. So I'm going to share some data that every week we share some data. We have a great conversation. So let's do that. And by the way, let me remind you, go ahead, hit the like button, hit the share, and become a subscriber. All right, here we go. Here's our data. Millions of students are heading to school, millions of them, somewhere between 49.4 million and 50 million students will go to school in the fall. That was based upon 2024 numbers. Right now, those numbers are going to top in the range of maybe 52 million, in that range perhaps. But here's a question for us. Roughly 11 to 12 million are in grades 6 to 8. That's a lot of adolescents out there. And every student is walking into adult created conditions. For my middle school leaders and educators out there, here's my question to you. Have you done a lot of study or enough study on what an adolescent really is? We know the grade level, we know the age, but do you know what an adolescent is? Do you understand the depth of what they're going to be going through as they come out of middle school and transition all the way to 8th grade on their way to high school? Do you know what that is? Here's another set of data that I want to talk about. Belonging is not guaranteed. Less than half of K-12 students feel belonging at school. 45% of middle school students feel part of their school community. Belonging drops across middle schools. We've had a lot of sessions on middle school and what that looks like. Not only does it drop, it drops precipitously. The difference between 5th grade and 6th grade, several points. Above 50% in the elementary, down to the 40s and 30s in some instances. That's really important to consider. Really thinking about how they're going to come into an environment that makes real space for them. When I was a teacher, the first week of school, we come back, most educators, we all come back early. We look forward to making our rooms, but we spend 2 days looking at our data from the previous year, going over the handbook, setting up the rules, looking at schedules, looking at lesson plans. Here's what we didn't do. We didn't talk about the conditions we really wanted to create for our students to come into. We didn't do that. We didn't really look at our climate survey data in a way that allowed us to say, wait a minute, let's stop. And here's the challenge that we face. We actually get very little time before school starts. Because school's out, we come back about a week and a half before school starts. We have logistical meetings, we have school-based meetings, and then we want to get time to fix up our classrooms. In all of that hustle and bustle, we actually lose sight of the children. That's important to consider. We lose sight of the children and what it means to create the conditions that they're going to really walk into come the fall. Now, we've been talking a lot about this, about the conditions adults shape, right? Adults are going to shape what students go to. U.S. public school students are majority students of color. 44% of public school students are white. The other 56% make up students from every other ethnicity. So the total group of students of color are more percentage-wise as a total than the total percent of white students. And hear me what I said. I said percent of students of color. I did not say we have majority minority students. If you, I'm going to go on the record right now, if you are in a place and you're hearing this language of, oh, we have majority minority students in our district, I'm going to challenge you to stop that right now. There's no such thing as a minor kid. And unless we are now going to begin to refer to white students as a minority, then okay, stick with that. I don't think we're going to do that. So let's stop using pejorative language when we're talking about students of color. That is one thing you can do right now. When students come to school, my district leaders, my building leaders, let's reframe our language around the majority of the students in our building. They're going to be students of color, not majority minority. 77% of public school principals are white. And nearly 87% of superintendents are white. Now, I want to say this. This is not a conversation solely about racial disparity. This is a conversation about power, because the narratives are shaped by the majority of those who hold positions. And if the positionality of the leadership does not accurately reflect the majority of who's in the building, we're going to have a different power conversation. We're going to have a power conversation that skews opportunity. We're going to have a power conversation that skews where students feel themselves. We hear a lot about students need to see themselves in the spaces around them. But if I'm a student of color and every single one of my leaders, my teachers, my principals, my APs, my coaches, nobody looks like me, what's the message to me? We got to ask ourselves those questions. What message is being sent by this disparity? It's important to consider. And that is why I really want to look at this idea of belonging and connectedness. I'm going to share with you the work of Robert Balfance. He is Everyone Graduate Center at Johns Hopkins University. And I looked at his connectedness work and our 4 dimensions of instructional power. I'm going to walk you through what I believe is going to really transform your learning environment. So here we go. Let's take a look at what we got. So we have the stance, the instructional power, the power of connectedness. It's about feeling known. These are his dimensions. It's about feeling known. It's about peer support. It's about pro-social engagement. It is about community acceptance. And I wanted to give you how you can sort of look at this for week 1. When we take a look at how this transpires, we have empowering. What does it mean when we empower students? We let them help us at the beginning. They shape at the beginning, not the end. And when we are talking about the agentive part, we are having the adults take surveys or inform. But if it's protective, then they're known by the data. Students are known by data. And if it's disenfranchising, they're reduced to a label. So when we have these discussions in the beginning of the school year, we focus on data. That is a protective stance. Now, don't get it twisted. Data matters. The numbers matter. But I really think it's important, I know it's important, to understand that the sole focus on data alone really can break down how we help students feel known. And this peer support place, when it's empowering, there is peer collaboration. It is built everywhere, in every task. And I'm not talking about turn and talk. I'm talking about real academic discourse, where students are grappling with the core ideas of a discipline, when they are really honing in on essential questions, the core tenets of a discipline, and they're engaged in the conversations. That's the collaboration. If it is agentive, then the students are choosing partners within a teacher structure. And sometimes you have to do that, but not all the time. How will you trust students to really begin to make those kinds of wise academic decisions? Are you teaching them? Are you engaging them? And what does it mean to choose your academic partner wisely and hold them accountable? If it is protective, then the peer contact is tightly managed by adults. And we see a lot of that when teachers do not want to, quote unquote, turn over the power. And if it is disenfranchising, then the peer ties are really excluded and they don't allow it. But then what about this pro-social engagement? And I want to be clear. Pro-social engagement is about more than just social, emotional, academic development. It is academic pro-social engagement within the confines. I don't even say confines, within the scope. Scope's a better word. Within the scope of the discipline. When that is empowering, students lead real community impact projects. When they are looking at their their living environments and creating the learning to connect to it. When that work is agentive, students pick from a menu, right? We love a good menu. But if menus are their only options, that is still adult-centered. And what happens if the pro-social engagement is protective? Then helper roles are assigned, rarely chosen. It's relegated to help me pass out paper, help me. It's very logistical and operational. And if it is disenfranchising, then there's no real avenue for students to engage in. And then what about this community acceptance? Belonging matters in school. We know it matters. The data says it matters. When we look at what Belfance is helping us really think through and consider, at the empowering side of that, it is students are co-authoring classroom norms. That's hard. It's hard. I know it's hard. It was hard for me. I keep saying I am a reformed power protector because I know what this feels like. I know it is hard to not have your rules set up before school starts. And let's be clear, I am talking about students at the secondary level, primarily middle school and into high school, but primarily middle. So they can handle this. This is something that's going to really open your space. That is what empowering is about. If this is agentive, then student feedback is sought, right? So the teacher will already have it done and then ask for feedback. That's what I used to do until I really understood whose classroom is it? What are my rules in service of? My rules were in service of me. I can admit that. Can you admit that for yourself? And if it is protective, then compliance is what we're talking about here. And then if it is disenfranchising, students learn they are the other. It is all about teachers making sure that kids do what they're told. The building is an adult-centered building where kids just happen to be. And this last part, we're going to talk about this, what can you do in week 1? Well, co-create. Look at co-creating. If you are a teacher who has really dug into some learning about instructional power, hopefully you have my book, because I cover what it looks like to move from power protecting and disenfranchising into agentive and empowering. Choose something and co-create. If you're still kind of learning and you want to go more agentive, then that's fine. Run a quick survey, an interest survey, asking kids what they want. But I want to challenge you. If you are power protecting, I'm going to push you not to power protect. It's going to be hard. I'm going to push you. Go ahead and choose one area that you might say, I'm going to back off a little bit and I'm going to turn this over to my students. And if it doesn't go the way you want, then you've learned something. But that's the challenge. That is what it looks like to really restructure, to look at the stance of when you are really power protecting because you're holding on to rules. Years ago, people would say, don't smile until November. Why is that? Who said that? Why are we doing that? This is a time to consider very carefully what you want your students to go to. Where are the areas you want them to really begin to be who we keep saying we want? We keep saying we want students who are independent, who are critical thinkers. And yet, what we do is everything that's the opposite of that. Everything that's the opposite of that, we do. So I'm going to challenge you to think about those four frames. I'm going to challenge you to really, really consider this power of connectedness, the empowering, the agentive, the protective, and the disenfranchising. And look at that from the stance of feeling known, the peer support, the pro-social engagement, the community acceptance. What does it look like? Using the idea of everybody graduates work from Belfance and our work on instructional power. That's going to make going to school categorically different than simply going back to school. Because when they go back, they're going back to the same environment they may have left when they themselves are different. So let's walk through our power moves this week. We always do power moves, and that's one of my favorites. So what kind of power moves are going to really help shape and reshape going to school this fall with those 49 million to 52 million students going to school this fall and the 11 to 12 million middle schoolers? Number one power move: name the power students are going to, not the one you think they're going to, the one they actually are going to. How can you do that? I'm going to tell you how you can do that. We have a set of tools on our website in our resource section that really can support you in understanding the power dynamics in your building right now, today. We have a wonderful survey, quick one pager. Take it. You will know what your power dynamics are. What does that look like? Identify one routine, expectation, or decision students will experience in week one. What is that? Examine which power stance it reflects. Is it empowering? Is it agentive? Is it protective? Or is it disenfranchising? And then determine whether it helps students feel known, connected, useful, and accepted. What's the impact of that? Adults begin the year seeing that students are not just going back to school, but they are going to a set of power conditions that either strengthen or weaken connectedness. That's power move number one. Power move number two: build a shared definition of agency. I cannot say this enough. A shared definition of student agency. What does it look like? Clarify what student agency looks like, feels like, and sounds like in your building. Name how students will contribute to the learning environment. Build one routine that helps students feel known, connected, useful, and accepted. Just one. Build one. And then power move number three: interrupt what students should not go back to. Stop doing that thing that we always do. And then choose one week one practice that could unintentionally protect adult comfort over student agency. Ask what students learn about themselves from that practice. And then interrupt one pattern before it hardens into culture. What's the impact of that? Leaders use start of school window to prevent protective or disenfranchising patterns from shaping students' first experience of belonging. It is imperative students go to school differently than what they're used to. They're used to the first week of school being all about the rules, the handbook, sign this, sign that. What would happen if for just this year we looked at going to school through a different lens? Because as we have said all month, Every adult decision is a power decision. And you, as the adult, the leader in the building, the leader in the classroom, the one in the district, you have the power to reshape this notion of kids going to school. It is more than just about a redecorated hallway. It is more than just about the signs that you put on the wall. It is more than just balloons. It is about creating real conditions that students are going to be able to experience, that's going to let them know that they are known, that they are useful, that they are connected to your learning environment in a new way. So that is our session for today. Thank you for being here. I want to put up a couple of reminders for everybody. Remember, go ahead and get Becoming Agency Savvy. That is huge for you as you go into this year coming up. Remember to stay tuned for our power chats. And I am thrilled to announce Karen Chenoweth will be joining us next week. She is the founder of Democracy and Education. She is the author of Districts That Lead and Schools That Lead. We are kicking off August with a focus on school boards. Won't you join us? Have a great rest of your evening. Thank you again for joining. Remember, like, subscribe, and share. Oh, I forgot. Yes, we are going to continue during this week at our Power Collective. If you have not joined our Power Collective yet, it's a private Facebook group. It's a community of people who want to take this conversation about power to the next level. So join our Power Collective private Facebook group, and we're going to continue this conversation over there. All right. Bye. Have a good. Thanks again for joining.